jewelry associated with King Tut. Once again, showing the high qualifications, the abilities of these people of the past. The ancient Egyptians were able to manufacture optical lenses. They have also found the remains of penicillin and antibiotics like aureomycin and terramycin in ancient Egypt. We could go to Jordan, to the city of Petra. Once again, highly advanced people of the past with architectural abilities and skills. Or we could go to Baalbek, Lebanon, where this huge stone, 66 feet long, 16 feet high, 14 feet wide, weighing over 2,000 tons. Many of these stones were used in the past for construction purposes by a civilization, an ancient civilization, that was in ruins when the Romans later built upon these base stones or base foundations with their architectural design. These large pillars, 70 feet tall, were brought by the Romans from quarries in Egypt across the Mediterranean and over 2 mountain ranges. We don't have the technology that would transport them, carve them, polish them as they are here, and put them in place. But in the past, the ancient peoples did. We could go to Cambodia, Angkor Thom, an entire city built on a system of canals, beautiful temples, stone temples. This particular one, Angkor Wat, the docks of this temple have been carved out of stone, and feathered serpents decorating the docks, carved out of stone. Incidentally, the feathered serpent is found associated with the worship of many civilizations of the past. We could go to Mohenjo-daro in the Indus Valley, another major ancient city of the past, showing their abilities. From Reader's Digest, this particular quote regarding Mohenjo-daro, which flourished approximately 4,500 years ago, says these people who built the cities also built an empire, and that these cities were modern, like a modern grid plan. They also found hot and cold running water pipes associated with these excavations in this location as well. Or we could go to China, noted for many interesting and amazing archaeological finds. Here is the remains of over 7,500 terracotta or ceramic soldiers and horses that were found in this burial region. Of course, ceramic was a difficult procedure in order to make artifacts of this size, and they are made to full-scale human size and full-scale horse size. Again, you could mention the tremendous skills that would be required in order to do this. It was in this location that earlier I mentioned that a sword was found that was made of 13 metals alloyed together. Or we could look at this lady buried over 2,100 years ago in China. And today her body is perfectly preserved so that it can be examined by an X-ray technician. Even the last meal which she ate is preserved in her stomach. We don't have the technology to do this today, but in the past they did it. Her body was buried at the base of a mound, and when it was excavated, they found a very complex system of coffins, one within each other, surrounded by charcoal. And within the sarcophagus were found many interesting things, like a compact containing rouge, lipstick, powder, brushes, silk gloves, and a silk scarf, lacquerware, printed cloth, silk cloth that had been printed, and musical instruments. Exactly what the Bible claims the people of the past were able to do. Or we could go to Central America, a location noted for tremendous cities. Over 100,000 archaeological sites in Central America alone. Huge cities of the past. Ziggurats, pyramids, associated with their worship of the various heavenly objects, the sun, the moon, the various planets. And in Central America, as around the world, the ancients worshipped the wind as God, the water as God, the rain as God. Literally everything was God. The great cities of the past throughout Central America also indicate that these people were not primitive, but highly advanced. They were obsessed with monitoring the various positions of heavenly bodies. In Chichen Itza, they set up an observatory to monitor the position of the planets. They had calculated the solar year to be 365.2420 days. mathematics to the 5th decimal point. And, of course, very close to the calculations that we have today of 365.2422 days. They monitored the position of Venus. They used what they called the Aztec calendar because they believed that Venus was in a Earth-interfering orbit that came by in 52-year cycles that brought catastrophe, judgment upon the Earth. Incidentally, the Bible talks about these judgments or catastrophes that did take place where God rained down wrath, fire, and brimstone on people of the past that had turned away from Him. We could look at some of their amazing medical achievements in the Oaxaca Museum. Obviously, this skull indicates that some human being of the past had some kind of a surgery performed on its skull, and the bone tissue has grown literally back into the opening. Or this one here shows that the teeth, both top and bottom, front teeth, have been drilled by some procedure. These people were not primitive, they were highly advanced. If we look at the geometric designs of some of the buildings in Central America, we see that they're very similar to what you would find in Cambodia or Indonesia. This particular temple in Central America, in the city of Mitla, the outer walls of this particular temple are covered with stones which are 18 inches thick, and they are packed together so tightly you can't even place a piece of paper in between them. Obviously, not put in place by trial and error, but by careful design. Or we could go to South America. Some of the great cities there of the past, Machu Picchu in Peru, located 7,000 feet up in the Andes, where great stones have been cut and shaped and notched and placed into position. Of course, this location, a sacred location for the worship of the pagan gods. Or we could look at Chan Chan, one of the cities in South America. And in this location, hot and cold running water pipes have been found here as well. To Bolivia, the city of Tiahuanaco, built high up in the Andes, 13,000 feet in the Andes. And it was already in ruins when the Incas had arrived. It was built by a previous civilization. And as some have suggested, when they look at these great structures that were built there, it appears to have been built on a scale fit for giants. Well, incidentally, the Bible talks about giants in Genesis chapter 6, and it says that there were giants a period after that, after the flood as well. People of the past who were supernatural creatures that were produced as a result of human intervention with fallen spiritual beings. We could look at another major building in the city of Tiahuanaco, which has been cast to the ground as if by some great catastrophe. And this large stone here, the gateway to the sun, weighing over 20 tons, which was moved to this location from over 60 miles away. Or another city, South America, Sacsayhuama, an ancient city built on a high hill. And the ancients worshipped on these high hills, worshipped the various heavenly bodies of which they associated their deities and demigods. And as we read throughout the Old Testament, we see that the Canaanites, the Philistines, were worshipping on high hill locations. And God had warned the children of Israel not to become involved in these high hill worship locations, worshiping the pagan gods. One of the large stones which makes up the fortress of this city weighs over 400 tons. Many stones this large have been placed side by side, almost as if they were putty, placed into position. Or we could go to ancient Europe, Stonehenge, England, an astronomical calendar to monitor the position of heavens and a site used for the worship of various deities and demigods. It was in these locations where there were stone alignments where the ancients would become involved in taking hallucinogenic drugs. They would become involved in all kinds of mind-altering techniques to alter their consciousness. Or they would construct, in other locations, medicine wheels. They would become involved in chanting, in crystals, in human sacrifices. Or we could go to a rather recent ancient civilization, ancient Greece, the Parthenon, or the temple to Zeus. Now, one thing that we can note from these various archaeological remains is that the older the civilization, the more mysterious, the more fantastic, the more advanced. And from an evolutionary perspective, totally unexplainable. Because it does not agree, it does not fit that the further back we go, the more primitive man should be. But as we look at